Well, howdy, friends. Brian Flechsig of Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, and welcome back to another episode in our series on fly tying. And today, we're here with Tim Flagler of Tightline Productions. So, Tim, one of the most recognized faces, or maybe voices,
and hands, right?
And hands in the world of fly tying. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here.
And you're very well known for your very short videos. I think you do these a lot with Orvis, about just tips and tricks. So we thought it would be cool for our viewers if you would just kind of walk us through a handful of your top fly tying tips that you would share with our viewers. I think that would be really awesome and a great honor because I'd probably learn something.
Yeah. One of the great things, this one pattern has a whole bunch of tips in it. And so just with one pattern, I can show a lot. One of the first things that I like to do, it's a little strange, if you are putting bobbins into bags and storing them, rather than having to pull the thread through or use a threader, I just get these, you can get O-rings from Harbor Freight, they're super cheap, and just go like that. Push it back on there, throw it in the bag, you don't have to pull it through ever again. When it's ready to go, just pull it off, and you're tying.
Wow.
Another trick for you, I'm gonna start this behind the hook eye, with all tying. And even when you're doing this, even when you're just getting your thread started, even tension, even strong pressure all the way around. We all have a tendency to lob over like that, but keep that pressure even all the way around, and your flies will just look better. It's a really simple way. Also, keep the distance between the tip of your bobbin and the fly, the hook shank, nice and short. I'm going to go there right to the start of the bend, which is oftentimes, not on every hook, but about halfway between the hook point and the barb. Okay? Really cool fly tying material is pine squirrel. It's got these beautiful fine dark markings in it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure. I don't like wasting even a millimeter of this stuff, so I measure here for the length of the tail rather than snipping it off later. Okay? I'm going to use a little bit of moisture. Just wet that fur, but there's my measurement on the leather hide. Transfer that measurement rearward. And here's a little trick for you. We're tying in a slippery leather hide on a slippery metal hook shank. And so what I like to do, again, even tension with a pinch wrap around once. You can see it just slip there, which it wants to do twice. But to stop it from slipping, pull this back, take two around just the hook shank, and then two over top again. And magically, it makes it so this really will no longer spin around the hook shank. There are a lot of different materials you can do that with. Then I'm gonna, once again, nice even pressure. I'm gonna spiral wrap. I'm just relocating my tying thread back up to the front. I'm using peacock herl here. Look for the packages with the longer herl, not the short ones. So I'm going to take just 3, 4, we'll get 3. Oh, I got a shorty in there. No good. Check to make sure they're all the same length. The tips on these guys are pretty brittle, so what I'm going to do is just snip them off. Another tip for you is, you guys have probably done this a bunch of times. If your thread is really corded up, spun up, you've been spinning a lot or wrapping a lot, you go to wrap and the loop jumps in front. You know what I mean? You just keep on missing that. If you give your bobbin a counterclockwise spin, as if you're looking down on it, nice big counterclockwise spin, you can probably see it here, Brian, the loop jumps rearward and catches those very, very tips. So, big one coming up here, guys. This is one I use for many, many different things. I'm going to start with my thread all the way back here. I have 3 strands of peacock herl, but I'm going to wrap behind my tying thread like this. Got to be careful of that hook point. But what it's doing is every time I take this wrap, I'm picking up on the weight of the bobbin. And so it holds those strands of peacock herl together. if you've ever made like a prince nymph or something like that, you tend to get one strand that wants to run up the shank before all the others and flip over, and you get the stem side up and you don't get a nice fluffy body like I'm getting here. So wrap behind your tying thread. And one of the cool things too is when you get to that final spot, right there where you want to tie your threads, right there. Take 3 wraps.
So it's literally pushing the thread.
Yeah.
You're pushing the thread right up the hook.
But that thread, because of the way the bobbin is keeping everything sandwiched together. And you can see, you know, getting a fluffy peacock body, not an easy task.
I'm horrible at it. Yeah.
So I'm going to use a nice big saddle hackle. Brian, I know you've been tying long enough to remember the days when, if we were tying a woolly bugger or something, you got that saltwater saddle hackle and you ended up with hackle on the fly that was about that big.
Yeah.
These beautiful saddle hackles. They're webby, they're long. You find a nice one here.
I had a lot of woolly buggers that turned into seducers.
And so with these, I don't want this real fluffy stuff, but I like the webby. The webby's great down here. And I like my fibers to be about a hook shank in length. So something like that. To do this, when you tie this in, I'm going to tie it in up at the front. I have the shiny side of the feather facing me, but that bare stem is going to slip out. And what I like to do is I take my tying scissors, brace them against the hook because I'm old, and shake. And I'm going to snip right here, take a few fibers off, brace again, take a few more off, and then when I turn it back, that's an awful big tie down anchor. So I'm just going to snip it off and leave a little diamond like that. Okay? Again, I want to catch that, so I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise. Take a few wraps to hammer that down. Then I am going to strip a few more fibers from the top edge of the stem. Just a few like that. Okay? That'll help it to wrap correctly. But I'm going to pull this forward. And kind of the trick here is those peacock curls are very delicate. If a trout gets a tooth in there, they're just going to go sprung. So I'm going to cord my thread up. I'm going to give it a really good clockwise spin. It's going to make it thinner, stronger, and actually add a little texture to it. But it makes it so I can do open spiral wraps back through the peacock curl without matting it down. But what I'm really doing is cross-wrapping that peacock curl because we wound it forward this way, winding my thread back this way. So it's cross-wrapping the herl. And so if a trout tooth gets in there, it can't come unwound.
Yeah, you're just adding a ton of durability.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one, if you've ever gotten, I got 2 little wonky fibers here, I'm just going to snip them off. If you've ever gotten a woolly bugger and you cast it down and across, let it swing, strip it in a couple times, you bring it in and your tippet is just spun up. It's this nasty knot. It's because a lot of woolly buggers are tied and they go right into a spiral wrap. And you've made a perfect corkscrew. And so, of course, it's going to spin underwater. Yeah. And so this doesn't completely fix the problem, but what I like to do is I like to take 2 or 3 flat wraps, one right behind the other at the front of the fly, kind of like to block that corkscrew effect. And then I can go into those open spiral wraps going forward. Come all the way back. Really lock that down, and if you're feeling lucky, rather than using your scissors, you can just snap it forward and break it off. Okay, now, again, I'm going to cord my thread up, and this time we've wrapped the hackle feather going back this way, okay? I'm going to wrap my thread through it, so I'm cross-wrapping that delicate hackle stem with nice corded up thread. And we've all had those woolly buggers that one bite and the hackle feather comes unwound and it's hanging off full length. This way it can't get broken off, okay? Now, there are a couple ways that you can do this here. You can just pull the pine squirrel forward. I do like to wet my fingers and give it a little part. I call it an alfalfa part. When I say that, when I'm teaching younger guys, they
don't know.
They don't have a clue.
No.
They again, wet the fingers, and the exact same tie-in technique that I used at the back, I'm going to use here. Nice pressure all the way around. 2 wraps there, lift up, 2 around just the hook shank, followed by 2 over top. We don't want that stuff spinning, okay? Now, probably the nerviest part of this fly anyway is trimming this. You don't want to hit the thread wraps. So I use the hook eye as a guide, use the inner part of my scissors, snip. Now, cool little tip, and this is from somebody else. This is from Mr. Davy McPhail, the Scottish fly tyer, who's amazing. And he uses this stuff, Vineyards tying wax. Really cool. I'm going to relocate my tying thread to right behind the eye. I want to cover that stuff up, and I want to keep the head small. If you've ever had a Clouser minnow, you know, and you go to take wraps and you have that bucktail cliff that it jumps off of, and the more you wrap, the tighter it slips off, everything gets loose, it's horrible. And so, but you take this Vineyards tying wax, and Davey McPhail puts it on his finger. I just rub it right on my tying thread. I think it's cobbler's wax. Really, really neat stuff. But what it allows you to do, sweep these fibers back and out of the way, is it makes your thread so grippy, you can just wind up, again, I'm using quite a bit of tension, you can wind up that hill without it slipping off.
Nice.
Yeah, and you can't do that with bare thread.
Yeah.
Another big tip for you is don't be like me. When I finish a head on a fly, I go, I'm going to take one more wrap. And 1 turns into 6, turns into 12, and pretty soon the head looks horrible. So what I'm going to do is I start again at the very back of that head, and I'm going to take wraps from back to front. That's going to form the best knot possible. And because I had everything covered up, this is just that final knot. And so this is how I keep the head nice and small, seat that knot really well. The other tip I have for you, I don't know whether you can see it, but I have the back end of my Mattarelli whip finish tool filed into a little chisel point. So I just put some tension on the tying thread and touch it with that chisel point, and it goes off, it breaks off. And that way you have nice clean, there's no tag sticking out. And final tip for you is one of these little bottles is, I'm not exactly sure how much they cost now, but
Not much.
Not much, and it allows you to put a drop just on there rather than wrestling with the cap on those old head cement bottles. Apply individual drops all the way around. Get that put back in there, and always, if you think of it, stab that eye with your bodkin to make sure that it's clear. Wow. I don't know how many tips that was in one fly, but I think it was a good number.
That was a lot. We had originally talked about doing a top 10 list, and I think that was more than 10. I know that I got a lot of tips out of there.
Yeah.
Well, gee whiz, that wax tip, and then the peacock curl, and then cording up your thread and getting counter wraps through there.
Yeah.
I mean, that fly is never going to come apart.
No, and it's one of the reasons I like doing it in classes is you get all those tips in one little thing, and they can be applied to so many different patterns. It's not just this one.
Yeah, I was envisioning tying a gotcha fly that I tie, and you get up at the head and you get that cliff like you talked about.
Oh yeah.
And one trick that I've done is just taking some Zappa Gap, Same thing. that you're
Same
doing.
idea.
Yeah, taking some Zap-A-Gap, put on, and it holds it and causes it so it won't slip down the cliff.
You're just building up as
But
you go.
it's not practical to use Zap-A-Gap on a small fly like that, especially with the feathers. So that wax tip is Vineyards.
Vineyards tying wax
Vineyards,
from the UK, I believe, and
Yep.
really neat stuff. Can be a little hard to find, but yeah, like it a lot. Thank you, Mr. McPhail. It's
Well, and thank you. So there you have it, friends. Tim Flagler's top 10 to 25 tips.
yeah, something like that.
All in one fly. I certainly learned a lot, and thank you so much. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. We're about to go out on the store floor at Mad River Outfitters and greet some folks and tie some flies here. We're going to order some pizzas
Super.
and have a shindig tonight, as
Looking forward to it.
they say. So there you have it, friends. You can check out Tim Flagler at Tight Line Video on YouTube, and you can learn so much you can learn from this guy. It's just absolutely amazing. I love watching his videos, and it's even more fun, let me tell you, watching him do it in person. So as always, friends, thanks for watching. We appreciate you being here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss an episode, and stay tuned because we've got a lot more fly fishing content coming your way.